Part 3. So we left that Hungarian border crossing and made a different route. And since leaving Aberdeen in Scotland, it had now been something like 5 or 6 days. We had all kinds of, breakdowns with the buses. The two buses, because they were not connected by phones in any way, kept losing one another, and so we had these 6 days of kind of wandering around Europe, crossing borders, losing one another, getting stuck, and so on. And we were like, the children of Israel who spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness. That's what it felt like to me. We just went on and on. And apart from the one night when we slept in the church, in Hamburg, we slept on the bus, but the bus wasn't designed for sleeping, so we were sleeping upright, or a few of us would take it in turns to sleep in the on the floor between the seats. It was highly uncomfortable. It was highly exhausting. But finally, we crossed into the Ukraine, and immediately everything changed. Literally at the border, the road changed, the quality of the road. The buildings that we saw, the things like toilet facilities, but worst of all, or most shocking to me, was if we went into a shop, there was almost nothing there to buy. And it was a real shock to my system, to all of us. The first little town that we crossed, that we came into, we stopped to buy some basic supplies like bread and cheese and so on. And when we climbed out of the bus, the most upsetting thing was the number of women, many with young children with them, who came to proposition the guys on the bus to sleep with them, to just have sex with them behind a building. They were so desperately poor, and it was heartbreaking to meet that. And we travelled on, and I remember falling asleep, and when I woke up we had stopped, and it was dark, middle of the night, and I looked around and we were in some kind of car park. So we'd been told, I think, that we couldn't stay, it wasn't safe, I don't know where we were, but it wasn't safe to park the buses overnight unless we were in a guarded place. And this was a guarded place, a big fence around it, and there were other vehicles there. And I climbed off the bus and I was walking, looking for like a toilet or something to drink, and massive Alsatian dog came charging towards me, barking at full pelt. I was half asleep. It was terrifying. Somebody called it and it didn't attack me. And then I found where a couple of other people from our buses were. There was a little shed, and inside the shed was the guy who was the night watchman for this car park place. And there was almost nothing in this shed, and we had no language in common, but somehow he was offering us coffee. But the way that he made his coffee was very interesting. There was an electric wire, just kind of hanging loose from the wall, with a sort of metal prod on the end of it. This was live somehow, and he would put this into hot water, like a cup of hot water, heat up the water. The whole thing looked so extremely dangerous, but he did this over and over again and made us instant coffee. And it was just like, I don't know what it was like stepping into another world, into another time, of generosity, but you know, none of the stuff that I'm used to, that I grew up with, none of the basic things like a kettle there. And then the next day, eventually, we came to Kiev, and it had taken us 6 days from Aberdeen to Kiev instead of 14 hours. And what we discovered when we arrived, we were staying a night or two at a Bible college, and yeah, that was another big shock. Was I remember sitting down to eat with these people, and they had a big plate, and then on the big plate was a little plate, and then on the little plate was some white, like kind of macaroni pasta stuff, and a tiny bit of sauce, but the sauce smelled and looked like the food that I used to give my cat. I don't know what it was, but there was so little of it, and it was served on a little plate, on a big plate, maybe to make it look more of a dinner. And this is what the students there ate every day, and it was very humbling. It was very humbling. And there was a meeting after that first dinner when it was worked out that, unfortunately, because it had taken 6 days to get here instead of 18 hours, one of the buses would have to go back to Aberdeen because of the holiday. You know, one of the drivers had taken his holiday, and now he didn't have time to go down and do all these other things that we were going to do, and he had to turn around and go back. And that meant that a lot of the people who'd come for this journey had to turn around and leave the next day. So they never got to visit the orphanages or deliver the aid or do any of the exciting things that we'd actually come to do. And that was very heartbreaking for everybody. And so it was also difficult to decide, well, who should go? Who should carry on? And for whatever reasons, it was decided I was going to stay. And then the next morning we waved goodbye to, I think they were all but like more than half the group had to go back to Aberdeen with that bus.